Here's Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and welcome to 16 by 9. They call themselves the outcasts of Europe, the Roma, a people with a long history of discrimination in their Hungarian homeland. Distrustful of authority and suspicious of outsiders, they come to Canada as refugee hopefuls. But with them come reports of rampant criminality and claims they're exploiting the refugee system. Our Lama Nicola went inside the Roma community, and as she discovered, the real story isn't so clear-cut.
This is a snapshot of a community caught up in controversy.
You can see it's a very active courtyard, a lot of people hanging out.
16 by 9 went to meet the people, hear the stories, learn about their struggles, and find out what draws them here. It's a diaspora at risk. We are here with translator Laszlo Sarkozy. At first, no one wants to talk. Whether it's shyness or mistrust, it's hard to say. But the Roma people haven't always had the easiest time fitting in.
Okay, she's saying they left the country Hungary because of the racist attitude that most of the people has.
Katalin Kovask is the first to open up here at Toronto's West Lodge Apartments, where it's said more Roma live than any place outside Hungary. And once Katalin opens up, the stories flow. She describes life in Europe where being Roma often means being swept to the fringes of society. Katalin's husband Tibor arrives home. He joins in telling how neo-Nazi groups in Hungary terrorize Roma without consequence.
And they can do whatever they want. Nobody stopped them. The police just standing by and doing nothing.
And Tibor says when he fled for Canada, his home was burned to the ground.
As the racist people knew that they left the country, they just destroyed their house. So they don't have house right now, don't have place to go back.
There are more refugees coming to Canada from Hungary than any other country.
The Refugee Convention is not there to protect people if they're having a tough life back home.
Immigration Minister Jason Kenney says the types of stories we hear at West Lodge may be sad, but they're not enough to claim refugee status in Canada.
If you're living in poverty and you're from a community that's getting a rough go, that's very unfortunate. But frankly, that probably characterizes billions of people around the world. Canada's refugee system is here instead to protect people who have a well-founded fear of persecution by their state or face a risk of torture or to their life and no state protection. About 95% of the Hungarian claimants do not meet that test.
Kenney says Roma refugees could go to 26 other democracies in Europe, and yet they choose Canada.
It's because we're one of the only countries I know of that provides immediate welfare benefits to asylum claimants the moment they show up.
Katalin and Tibor are fighting to stay here after the refugee claim has been denied. They're supporting their family of 7 on social assistance. Kenney says the cost to Canadians to process one claim is about $50,000.
So the costs for receiving 6,000 largely unfounded European asylum claims per year just from the EU is massive. I mean, it's in the range of $350 million to Canadian taxpayers. This is serious money.
We haven't been treated fairly. The community has been treated as and labeled as bogus refugees that are not genuinely escaping harm.
Gina Sanyi-Roba is the executive director of the Roma Community Centre in Toronto.
People look at it, well, you know, they're coming from safe democratic European countries, you know, like as if Europe is immune to, you know, discrimination and persecution against their people.
We will survive. Back at the Slow Rent apartment in Toronto, things are different for this man. Tibor says a little dignity for him is priceless. Why do you want to stay in Canada?
Miért szeretné itt maradni? He and his family just feel themselves as a human being. And you know, it's something what is impossible in Hungary.
Does he have any? Just as the words leave Tibor's mouth, 16 by 9's visit to meet the Roma takes a disturbing turn.
What is your problem with the Roma?
Because they give me so much hard time. Nobody can normally live. Garbage and music and noise.
From the Roma?
From the Romas, yeah. Terrible. The worst people on the world.
This woman asks us to leave the property. We do, but she follows us to the public sidewalk. A crowd of Roma people gather around 16 by 9's camera wanting to talk about what just happened, which they tell us is not unlike racism they experience in Europe.
She was quite hostile. She was very upset. And even though I told her we were invited on by residents, she accused the Roma of making life very difficult, that she can't get any sleep.
Mindig dobál minket csúnyán, beszél velünk.
Okay, the children saying the lady, she always throwing them with pieces of, rocks.
She throws rocks at you?
Mert kiabál velünk, hogy mi játszunk fogócskát.
And shouting at them because they are playing.
But does she only do this with Roma children?
Yeah.
Only Roma. How does it make you feel when she throws stones at you like that? Bad?
Roma residents told us this building has a curfew for them only.
They have a 9 o'clock curfew?
Yes.
So 9 o'clock you have to go home?
Go home, in fact, we're sleeping.
Sokan nem akarnak a gyerekek
Really?
cigizni.
Yes.
Why?
I don't know.
They call the police?
Yes.
There become spikes in calls for service where the Roma are perceived to be at the core of it. The community at large is beginning to want to push back against what they feel may be an inordinate amount of need for calls for service in that area.
Robert Tajdi is a Toronto police officer in 11th Division. His job is to work with the Roma community. His job is to know them, understand them, and get inside their world. Toronto police respond to numerous calls per month at West Lodge.
The nature of the complaints that we received from the community have principally been about noise, and it's been described from the complainants as nightclub level noise.
Hear the music?
Well, you get 70 complaints
A month, yeah.
a month
Yeah.
about music.
Music, yeah.
What else? Just
Causing disturbance to other residents, damages all the property all around.
It's a community that continues to need extra resources in order to aid them to integrate into the more mainstream community.
Next on 16 by 9, a victim of human trafficking by a Roma crime ring.
Doesn't matter if he's in the jail or he's out. He's gonna hunt me forever. It's a very poor city. No jobs, nothing.
Tomas Miko was desperate for work back in Hungary, so when he was approached by a Roma woman who said she could help, he was all ears.
She called me because she knows I'm not working. And she told me she has a sister here in Canada and her husband has construction. He said he can give me a job with good money, 3,000-4,000 per month. And he told me, you don't have to worry about plane ticket. We buy the plane ticket for you. You just have to do your passport.
When Tomas arrived in Toronto, a Roma family called the Domators whisked him off to their home outside Hamilton.
That was a big house, like a castle or something. Yeah, that was a big house.
It didn't take long for him to realize he had been snared in a terrible trap.
So we went down in the basement. There was all over, mattress on the floor. And she said, you're gonna sleep here. Okay.
His new roommates were also his new co-workers.
Started work around 6 to midnight. Sometimes we worked at 2 a.m. in the morning. We worked every day. And doesn't matter if you're sick or something happened with you, you have to work.
A few weeks later, a Roma family coached him on exactly how to respond to keep immigration at bay.
They write me down what I have to say if somebody asking me. I'm a Roma, I don't have a job in Hungary, people try to kill me in Hungary,
Tomasa's not Roma, but he would live that lie for 6 months and he couldn't escape.
When we opened the door in the basement, there was a detector. When you go up the stairs, there was another detector everywhere. Even the window in the basement. When you open the window, the system is on.
Until one day, one of the workers stood up to his captors. They kicked him out. He went right to the police. Hamilton police then took the case to the RCMP. In June, Ferenc Domatar received 9 years, the longest sentence for human trafficking in Canadian history. Tomas and others were free, but haunted.
The first time I had lots of fear and everything. I had nightmares. These people made me sick, mentally, emotionally, everything.
Immigration Minister Jason Kenney says some waves of immigrants have ties to organized crime in Europe.
As far as we can tell, there are sort of ringleaders who advise people on how to come and use the Canadian system. They find cheap flights, they almost bring people over here like travel agents. We have had flights arriving at the Pearson Airport with dozens of asylum claimants coming off the same flight.
According to documents obtained by 16x9, Canada's Border Services Agency sent a duty officer to Hungary to find out why the flood of refugees. The documents state, while some individuals could face the risk of being victims of human trafficking, others are solely opportunistic and have identified an exploitable weakness in Canada's generosity and assistance toward refugees with a legitimate need for protection. Kenney had to see it for himself. He returned recently from a fact-finding trip to Hungary.
While there are some really vile and hateful extremist forces in Hungary, this shouldn't be exaggerated, that while we condemn what's going on there, the people I met with in the Roma community were unable to point to any actual violent attacks that have occurred in recent years.
He says Canada needs to weed out who is behind false claims and send them packing before they get their fingers into the Canadian purse.
I think we as Canadians need to be soft-hearted when it comes to protecting bona fide refugees, but we also have to be hard-headed about some people who occasionally come here abusing our generosity.
Canada Border Services Agency says most refugees come and go, but not without sapping the system of money first. Many refugee claimants are withdrawing their application. This appears to occur only after they have been in Canada for a significant period of time, allowing them to collect substantial amounts of social assistance prior to returning to Hungary. Last year, over 4,400 Hungarians claimed refugee status in Canada. Of those, 92% were withdrawn, abandoned, or rejected. In 2010, Canada received 23 times more Hungarian refugee claims than all other countries combined.
The reality is that the significant majority of these Hungarian claimants don't actually show up for their refugee hearing. They are telling us through their own actions, by withdrawing their claims, that they don't need our protection.
This man, who is a Roma refugee claimant himself, agrees with Kenney that many Roma come to make fast money.
They make money and they have no intent to stay here. And once they have made their money, they leave.
Fearing his community would come after him, he only agreed to speak to 16x9 if his identity is kept hidden. He says growing up Roma is about living and dying on the road.
You don't adhere to the laws of the land that you're in, so you just commit a crime or do whatever, and you just move on to the next stop. There is no sense of responsibility, there is no onus to your actions.
He says his claim is legit, and he's removed himself from the community, hoping it'll increase his chances of becoming Canadian. Meanwhile, Tomas, a victim of human trafficking by Roma, has been granted permanent residence in Canada. He would gladly return home to Hungary, but he says his traffickers have tentacles reaching into Europe, and he fears they will seek revenge.
I know it doesn't matter if he's in the jail or he's out from the jail. He's gonna hunt me forever.
Next on 16 by 9, are Canadians committing hate crimes?
Constantly referring to the Roma as criminals, parasites of society.
One woman distracts, while the others appear to be stuffing as much as possible under their skirts. This is surveillance video released by police after dismantling an international crime ring. And police claim it's Roma. Police allege the ring recruited people to Canada, and once here, they would claim refugee status and be roped into a distraction, theft, and fraud operation. During Project Mansfield, police arrested 34 people and laid 263 charges. Police say the investigation found over 400 people with ties to the crime ring. Similar crimes were seen in London, Sudbury, and in Toronto. Police allege the ring defrauded over $2 million from social assistance.
We found that there's a number of people who are Romas that are coming to Canada for a criminal purpose. Do keep it within the family.
And then, in the wake of the police bust, there was this by Toronto television host Ezra Levant.
I want to dispatch cops and send the bad gypsies back to Hungary on the next plane. Just warn the flight attendants not to wear any jewelry on the flight.
Ronald Lee is a Canadian-born Roma. He has been writing about Roma since the late 1960s and has spent a lifetime teaching about the culture.
We're not just anybody who decides to travel around, wear an earring, play the fiddle, like Ezra Levant would claim, but he would also add theft. No, we are a legitimate people.
But gypsies aren't a race, they aren't a religion, they aren't a linguistic group. They're the medieval prototype of the Occupy Wall Street movement, a shiftless group of hobos that doesn't believe in property rights for themselves, they're nomads, or for others, they rob people blind.
It was really offensive what he did. Everyone was shocked. I had average Canadians that I had never had contact with before writing to me saying what they saw was incredibly racist and unfair and hate propaganda.
Sun Media, the broadcaster of the video, issued an apology and removed it from their website. The Roma Community Centre has filed a hate crime complaint to Toronto Police against Sun Media. The Roma people trace their roots to India. In the Middle Ages, they joined Afghan armies as mercenaries and made their way through the Middle East and eventually to Romania. There, many were sold as slaves.
Here is a bill of sale. Now, they had the same conditions as African American slaves in the South. Families could be bought and sold, divided, the wife sold to one owner, the husband to another.
The Nazis exterminated 1/4 of Europe's Roma population in World War II.
We are survivors. We survived centuries of horrible persecution.
And now, some say the political landscape in Hungary has a very scary undercurrent, all too familiar. This poster advertises a march for Hungarian life in Hungary. It says, "Enough, ghetto squatters, Canadian Roma."
The neo-Nazi movement has been going on in Europe for quite a few years now, and it's getting stronger and stronger. Blame the Roma for everything that's wrong in the country.
Gina says her worry is that the same attitude is simmering in Canada.
constantly referring to the Roma as criminals, parasites of society. This is the same discourse that's taking place in Canada. I'd never, even as a Canadian-born woman of Roma background, never imagined that our government would target any group like this so specifically and so negatively.
Immigration Minister Jason Kenney says the government isn't targeting anyone. It's just trying to weed out false refugee claims and save money. So it has introduced a new pilot program to do just that. Now, in Canada, when someone loses an asylum claim, the government is offering help to go home.
We just sit down with them and say, look, there's one of two ways this could go. You either go underground and evade deportation, and then things aren't going to turn out well for you. Eventually, you'll be removed from Canada.
Or